All right, so the next speaker is actually me. So let me switch to my other PowerPoint presentation. Make sure I'm sharing the proper one. Can everybody hear me? David, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
It's a little quiet, I couldn't tell.
I hear you.
All right, let me pull up my presentation here. Just a reminder, everybody, please stay on mute while the speakers are talking. And I will press go. Let's see if I can get this out of my way here. Here we go. All right, so my name is Aaron Bergstrom. I am the Advanced Cyber Infrastructure Manager for the University of North Dakota, which means I run the high performance computing systems here. I also am the liaison to the Midwest Big Data Hub for UND, and I deal with, I help plan for artificial intelligence and the upcoming artificial intelligence and big data program that the university is putting together. My talk today will be on unmanned aircraft systems in agriculture, data issues of privacy, ownership, and sharing. My co-authors are John Nowatzki at North Dakota State University, Trevor Witt at Kansas State University, Travis DeSalle at the Rochester Institute of Technology, and Kurt Barnhart at Kansas State University. I should add that I'm also the PI of the UAS PSE project, under which Unmanned Aircraft Systems, Plant Sciences, and Education, through which this workshop is funded. Travis DeSalle at RIT used to be the previous PI before he moved to that institution, and Kurt Barnhart is a co-PI on that award. So let's get into it. In 2015, the state of North Dakota put together several $100,000 worth of funding to do private academic partnerships in the area of unmanned aircraft system, particularly large aircraft systems. That particular set of funding funded a precision agriculture project and a disaster response project. The precision agriculture project was led by North Dakota State University, and it imaged 102,000 acres of cropland. And the disaster response project was led by University of North Dakota. It imaged the town of Mayville, North Dakota in Traill County, and it physically simulated storm damage. So in other words, they actually went out and laid down giant logs, pretend that they were down power lines, excuse me. And then we had the UAV system that was imaging it, flew over the town. And the corporate partner for that one was Xcel Energy. So there was quite a bit of work done there to do if they could see about automating, identifying infrastructure damage after storms. So that's kind of the basis for this. Since they were both funded out of the same research project, we had a corporate partner called Elbit out of Fort Worth, Texas. It's actually the U.S. division of an international company that's based out of Israel. And they deployed the Hermes 450, which is a 35-foot wingspan unmanned aerial vehicle, or AKA drone. It required a pretty sizable ground station, and the plane actually flew multiple passes over both the Mayville, North Dakota area for the disaster response project, and also for the precision ag project. The missions were flown from the Hillsborough Municipal Airport, so it was quite interesting to see that. That the plane itself is about the size of a regular small private aircraft. So here we see a map of the Midwest region, sort of the corner of South Dakota, Minnesota, and North Dakota. You can see on this map, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but there's where Fargo, North Dakota is. There's where Grand Forks. So NDSU is located in Fargo. University of North Dakota is located in Grand Forks. And obviously here's where the U of M is located, down here in the Minneapolis area. And Traill and Steele counties were the flyover, or were the test areas. And if it's not really visible here on the map too well, but right about here is where Hillsborough Airport is. So the imaged area for the Precision Ag project was about a 40-mile by 10-mile strip of land between the interstate, which is I-29, and I think this is Highway 32. So that's about 40 miles. And so it was a 10-mile wide image. Obviously, that was, as stated before, that was 102,000 acres that they imaged. And they did that 3 times, as stated previously. Oops, wrong direction. You know, once at 3,000 feet, 5,000 feet, and 8,000 feet. So they collected a lot of data. And those produced 1-mile mosaic images. So the question is what kind of approval or buy-in from the local ag industry / farmers / private plane owners do you have to get in order to not get bad press and to make everybody happy? So I think one thing, and I'm pretty sure everybody, it's kind of where we come into discussion about data use agreements and what's allowed and what farmers will agree to and what people agree to in general. It's not really required by law that you get a farmer's permission to fly over their property and take photos, because you can do that from any airplane as long as you're over 400 feet. So, you know, in reality, the data person who takes the picture is the one who owns the data. But obviously, if you're going to fly over a 400 square mile area, and you're likely to irritate a lot of farmers if you don't get their buy-in first. So that brings us to the questions of, you know, what's legal, what's ethical, and what's just your community obligations, right? I mean, you may be able to ethically do it, legally do it, but you live in a community, and you gotta make the community, you wanna make sure that the community understands what you're doing and is happy with what you're doing. So there were concerns that that people had, and I think one of the things that NDSU did wisely is they went out and they advertised that these flights were going to take place, and then they advertised community meetings. And so they had a number of private aircraft owners and regional farmers show up and, you know, voice their concerns about who's going to own the data, who's going to have access to it. You know, what kind of, the pilots especially were concerned about safety issues. They brought in an officer, a pilot from the Air National Guard of North Dakota, and he was able to address the safety concerns of the pilots, so they were generally okay with what was going to happen. I believe there was a chase plane involved, so it was not out of, it wasn't completely out of sight. John Nowatzki's in the call here. He can maybe elaborate on that a bit further. But I think the biggest thing was the farmers didn't want really somebody taking a picture of their farm, right? You can legally go in and take a photograph of a farm as you fly over it. But as the analogy was put forth in some of these meetings, you could go in a restaurant and take a photo of the meal, but essentially taking a photo of a farmer's land is essentially like going in and taking a photo of all the secret recipes in a restaurant. So they basically gave the opportunity to the farmers to opt out. Well, it's hard to opt out of the data collection, but once the data was captured, to opt out of having it retained, right? So they went around, John Nowatzki went around to the courthouses in Traill County and Steele County and got the addresses of all the farms in the area and basically sent them a letter giving them the opportunity to opt out of the data retention. And, you know, and I think the response back that they got shows just how well received the community meetings were, because in the end, they only had 2 responses back asking for the data not to be retained. So one farm was just, they just didn't want their homestead in the data, the collected data. So basically the rest of the farm was fine. They just wanted to cut out the homestead where the family lived. The other farm, it's my understanding that person was extremely angry and didn't want any of their farm being recorded. And so they basically cut that farm completely out. And then a bunch of people, and then they also gave all the farmers a chance to access the data that was collected. So I think John told me that the farm that where they wanted the homestead cut out, they still wanted the data for the rest of the farm. And so we get on to sharing data. Now you can imagine that 400 square miles of 1 mile mosaics is difficult to share with everyone, especially when you overfly it 3 times. And so the average data collection for the farm was 40 gigabytes to 50 gigabytes. And they tried making that data available for download, but some of the farms were in rural areas with poor internet connections. They would take hours for that data to download. So what they ended up doing in the end is putting that data on thumb drives and driving it out to the county agents and letting the farmers pick up the thumb drives from the agents. Which, you know, in the grand scheme of things, you know, it's what they say, the drive internet, I forget the terminology, but yeah, that's the faster way of doing it. And that's a more reliable way of doing it. And it's not what we want to happen. I think we all want to just have everything accessible online all at the same time, but rural internet's an issue and probably will continue to be an issue for some time.
Aaron, you have 5 minutes.
All right. Well, then I'm going to have way too little time. So one of the things we were working on at UND in regards to the disaster relief or disaster project was putting that data online in a way where people could access it. And I know that Travis had some conversations with John Nowatzki at NDSU about making the agricultural data available through our Open Repository, or OUR. That actually resides on the UAS PSE project's website, and you can see the URL there at digilag.org/ORU. But essentially, we built, I'll skip over a slide here. We built a application that you authenticate using your Google account, and then you can go in and we make these tools available called Open Sea Dragon. And it's basically deep zoom imagery where you go in and basically you're able to zoom, as you zoom in, you get more data from the server. The upside of this is that you could go in, view the data, and use some of the tools to outline, you know, build your shapes and whatnot. And then you could send it, because the data resided on our storage, it was connected to our HPC system, you could send that data off to the HPC to be analyzed. But anyway, so you have the opportunity to upload your mosaics, and then if it failed for some reason, when you continue the upload, it would pick up from where it left off, which makes it easier to upload large data sets if you're not worried about being interrupted all the time. Yeah, we protected mosaic visibility, so the person who owns the account actually can restrict who has access to it. Skipping over a lot of the big details here. But basically, as an organization, you can decide who you're going to share it with. You just put in their email address, and then the person with that email address, Google email address, can access your mosaics. And then it's pretty fast. It functions pretty well. I'm not going to show it here, but if you go to the website, you can just try it out and see how well it functions using that disaster data. Already covered sharing. And there's opportunities to apply filters through the various libraries that we have installed on there. But, you know, I don't know if it was completely appropriate for sharing with the farmers. I don't know, I don't think Travis and John could maybe elaborate in the questions about how much discussion they actually had of integrating the precision ag data into it. As you can see here, you can do overlays. So last thing I want to talk about is this summer we did, or this past year, the UAS PSE project did what's called the UAS Roadshow. And so KSU folks went around all over the Midwest and basically demoed what small UAVs could do for capturing data on farms. And Travis Witt was the one who ran the program, ran into several folks that were doing agriculture data co-op models for data sharing and resource management. And so I think one of the things we're going to elaborate more on in our paper is a discussion about how these co-ops are putting forth resources that farmers can either be a part of by buying into it or participating. Not a whole lot detail here, other than that there's the two primary entities that we currently know of are the Agricultural Data Coalition, and they basically do storage for farmers, and they have methodologies for sharing that information with compatible farm management information systems. And they also offer education materials, but they don't provide value-added services. The other entity is somebody who was already on here asking questions earlier today, the CEO of Grower Information Services Cooperative. I think he had a conversation with Trevor at one of the road shows, and they offer storage, and they're farmer owned, but they in addition to what the storage that they offer, they also offer value added services like access to aggregated anonymized historical data, weather data, market forecasting, and document management. And so I think, I think one of the we haven't really covered it in this talk, but I think one of the things we could think about is how R&D, industry and academic research projects can maybe start working with cooperatives to figure out how best to provide additional services and provide some kind of value feedback to these new cooperative organizations that are being started up.
Aaron, you have 1 minute.
Well, that's good because I'm done now. So maybe we can start the questions early. I will stop sharing my screen. Yeah, and if anyone wants to throw some questions at me, go right ahead.
Okay, one comment was that this is another example of how ag data is treated or are treated differently than some commercial data. There are legal cases in which aerial photography was deemed to be a breach of proprietary information. But in the comment, one might have trouble explaining how a farm's operations are viewed from the air, as viewed from the air, are proprietary. So that was a comment, not a question.
Right. And I don't know if John is on, if John was able to join us. If you want to comment, John.
Yeah, I am on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great. Why don't you respond to that comment?
Okay, what was the comment about why is ag different, or what is different?
Well, it's a comment that ag data is treated differently than some commercial data. Aerial photography of a farm it's hard to explain to some people that that's a proprietary information. Yeah.
Well, from a farmer's point of view, I think, how many acres of each crop they plant is not public information. It's available through the Farm Service Agency, but it's only available to the owner. And yield is not available. So you could get yield from data. I mean, you could get a pretty accurate estimate of yield. And one farmer told me, he said, I just spent $20,000 defending myself from a case where the NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, said that I drained a wetland on my land, and he didn't, but he had to defend himself. And what happened was somebody drove by the road and saw him out in the field with the ditcher in the fall of the year, and he then reported it to NRCS, so that they required then to report it. And what he said is, people would look at this and say, maybe I'm doing inappropriate things, and then I'd have to defend myself again. So that was one thought. Mm-hmm. I think farmers are they think of themselves as a private business, and they see that farm as their business and not somebody else's. That's how I thought about it.
Billy seems to be talking, but his mic is muted. Bill, you want to?
Oh, I thought I guess I'd been unmuted all the time. What I was going to say, Aaron, is I think that I just want to clarify something at the end of the presentation you did talk about, and I did talk to Trevor, by the way, when he was in Nebraska. You did talk about GISC. You also mentioned ADC, which is the Ag Data Coalition. And I think the unique thing is, because this is such a hard space to operate in, I do close work with the ADC. So at one point we were known, I had a sub-organization that was known as GADC, which was the Growers Ag Data Cooperative, to be their data cooperative. The problem was we never really got that going, and there's so much cost to just keeping infrastructure. We just came back to where we're at. But I would say this, I think there is, I'm going to give them a plug. I think there is a lot of value to what they've tried to do, especially when you're talking about researchers. And then I think we could coordinate some things together. So I'm going to share, is this recording going to be available, Aaron?
Yeah, it'll be available.
I'm going to share this with the leadership there. I'm very close with them. I think we ought to think about how we can sort of promote research among farmers and easy ways to bring the data in and store. And they do understand that transition. How do you get data in? So anyway, I just wanted to clarify there, because a lot of people thought we were competitors. And so I've had to clarify that issue many, many times.
Sure. Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions, David?
Nothing right now.